What would a Cowboys draft look like if they drafted a wide receiver in round one? How about a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on. Locked on.
Cowboys.
Locked on. Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, you and I are going to try to do something today on the show that we have never done before. That is complete 3 mock drafts in like 25 minutes. How you doing today, sir?
I don't even have the time to tell you because we need to get right into mocking. So I'm doing well. Let's start mocking and let's explain to everyone what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So the goal today is you and I are going to try to do a mock, 3 different mocks with us taking a different position in round one, basically to see what flow of the draft we like better, right? We always talk about draft sequencing, and it seems like every year we find out, hey, it's better if you take this position first and wait on this position. And that's basically what we're doing today.
Yeah, and we wanted to try, several different combinations to see what would kind of produce the best results. And I think this is something that the Cowboys are going to be doing a lot of right now, is kind of figuring out, okay, we have a couple of different positions we'd like to target. There are a couple different windows of quality of each one of those positions. What's the best way to get the highest quality of all 3 or 4 of these positions that we're trying to target in this draft?
Yeah, and our goal today is we're going to take a round 1 pass catcher, a round 1 offensive lineman, and a round 1 defender just to see how everything goes. So let's go ahead and do our first mock. Landon, I'll read you some of the names that are available: Brian Brzee, Will McDonald, Michael Mayer, Zay Flowers, Emmanuel Forbes, who is a 30 visit for the Cowboys. On top of Osiris Torrance, you still have Steve Avila. Who stands out to you here?
Well, I think, this is anyone who's done the PFF mock draft has come to this spot many different times and seen a lot of these selections before. So I think maybe what we should start out with today, let's do a defender. Let's pick a defender here. And I would say it's probably between, what'd you say, Forbes and McDonald, right?
Probably. Let's do Emmanuel Forbes, because we haven't actually talked about him very much on this podcast, and we can go into him a little bit. But this is, you want ball skills, Landon, in the SEC. Yeah. I think he's got the most pick sixes ever in college football, 14 interceptions. He just knows how to play the ball in the air, but he's 166 pounds. How much does that scare you?
It scares me. I think, there was reports that came out lately that he got up to 170, didn't he? Sure. I think at his pro day.
How much of that is water weight?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was pretty sure he was wearing long socks and they were soaked in water beforehand. So, it's scary. Especially for on a defense where you have a corner in Trayvon Diggs who is not always that physical as a tackler, to put a 170-pound cornerback out on the field. It feels like you're inviting a lot more of running attack to the outside, which, if you remember with the Cowboys, was a struggle that the Cowboys had at a certain point last year. So, yeah, I worry about the kind of physical toll his body is going to take at that weight, the ability to physically stop. Just a physics problem of trying to stop a 220-pound running back. But everything outside of that, like as far as coverage or ball skills or the ability to play inside or outside or zone versus man coverage, this dude has got that in spades. And honestly, I think if you look at his game, you watch him play, he's long, he's tall, he's fast, he's got great ball skills. He's a gambler. There's lots of things to like about him, but the weight is it's a blinking red light, and it's something that you have to be a little bit concerned about. How much better can he even get, and how long will he be able to kind of hold up on the corner at that elite.
Now the good thing is the Cowboys have depth at corner, so you might
Yeah.
not have to force them on the field right away, right? You've got Trevon Diggs, you've got Stephon Gilmore, you brought back Jordan Lewis, you have Deron Bland. You could probably allow him, almost a redshirt year to gain some strength. But man, if you want somebody that has just the chance to be an absolutely dominant cornerback in the league, I think Emmanuel
Yeah.
Forbes has it. So, all right, back in round 2, we've got our corner. Here's some of the names available. Zach Charbonnet, a running back from UCLA that we both like quite a bit. Tyreek Stevenson, don't need a corner, so we are good there. Tank Dell, wide receiver from Houston. And then it gets pretty dicey the rest of the way. A.T. Perry from Wake Forest. Any name here that stands out for you?
Well, I gotta say, I'm kind of upset with PFF for updating their database so that Chandler Zadvala is
Yes.
now a top 90 pick. Is he was always somebody I was trying to hit in the 5th round. I think at this point, despite just picking a 166-pound cornerback, I think the guy that's sticking out here on this list to me is Tank Dell. I mean, a little bit. I mean, unless you wanted to kind of go the route of going a Zach Charbonnet and then kind of delaying things a little bit and see what you can get.
I like Charbonnet a lot. I really do.
Yeah, and I did too. And I think that he is a step above those kind of other guys. So I would be okay with taking him and then waiting a little bit on wide receiver if you wanted to go wide receiver. I think at this point for offensive line, I'm probably waiting. There's not someone that's a blinking red light at 58. Unfortunately, my guy Joe Tipman got taken looks like 2 or 3 picks in front of us.
Avila went at 52. Yep.
Yeah, Trenton Simpson got Avila went 52 as you mentioned. So for me, I think I would probably take the running back here just because I think that you're going to get good value. He's going to give you 4 solid years of high quality running back. You're going to love that pairing with Tony Pollard.
I agree. I think Zach Charbonnet in the 2nd round. I don't know if it's a steal, but I think it's certainly a good enough pick.
Solid value.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. All right. To finish out this mock, man, a lot of the same guys that were available in the 2nd round here in the 3rd round. Corey Trice, if you want a corner, we already got ours. Dorian Williams, a linebacker. Kobe Turner, defensive tackle from Wake Forest. If you want a receiver, we'll slide over to the receivers really quickly. A.T. Perry, Keyshawn Boutte, Jaden Reed, Jonathan Mingo. Any names there that stand out to you?
If you go back, there's just a couple more I'd throw out there in the offensive line group. I think if you scroll down just a little bit, we've got the Wanya Morris, who's a tackle from Oklahoma. He's kind of more of a developmental guy. He started out at Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, and then transferred to OU. And really came on this last year, but he's sort of a toolsy player a little bit. So, but that actually may work for the Cowboys, because they've got guys at tackle. I actually think the guy I'm interested in looking at is who I just mentioned, the North Carolina State guard, Chandler Zavala. Yeah, because I think the thing is that I don't know that he's quite plug and play starter as a left guard. But I feel like before, either by the end of training camp or, a couple games in, he could probably take over that job if you wanted to slide him in. One thing I really like about him, as you're showing right here on the screen, is that he was a left guard at North Carolina State. So he definitely is not going to have to make any kind of transition or learn any footwork in that sense. It's just going to be about dealing with the jump from, the competition at North Carolina State versus the NFL. So, I think to get a guy like this in the 3rd round is a good value, and it fits kind of what the Cowboys are looking for.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. So we went with Emmanuel Forbes. Then we took Zach Charbonnet, running back from UCLA. And then we took your guy Chandler from NC State in the 3rd round. And listen, that's kind of where you want to be drafting your interior offensive lineman anyways. So PFF gives us a B-. I wouldn't hate this draft at all. Let's see what we do in our next draft when we try to maybe go offensive playmaker or offensive line in round 1. This episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything and everything from the money line to point scores to three-pointers drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That is FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Landon, let's get ready to do our next mock draft. So we've drafted our cornerback in round 1, or a defensive player in that one. Let's go with our offensive playmaker, and there's a certain name that just jumps off the board here, as we did it. Bijan Robinson available in round 1. Do you want to take him here, or do you want to go offensive line?
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about running back. We talked about drafting running back. We did a draft in which we drafted Gibbs in place of Robinson one time. So I think let's look at what offensive line has here. Let's look at pass catcher.
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid's still there.
You notice I didn't specifically say wide receiver.
Yeah,
I said
fine.
pass catcher. So yeah, Antoine Harrison, again, another OU offensive tackle that is a big, strong, powerful player. Obviously a higher pedigree than Wanye Morris at this point, more of a known commodity. He's obviously kind of in this range. DeJuan Jones, huge offensive tackle from Ohio State, absolutely enormous. Avila's still there. Tippmann is still there. I know I like Tippmann, I think, more than the Cowboys might. I tend to think that I would go with Kincaid here, just because he's available in a way that maybe
Sure.
Some of these other guys weren't. And I think we're going to be able to draft. Like, if the Cowboys get where they want 26 and they don't care about taking Avila there, I have a feeling he'll be there for them.
Yes. It feels like a very much, I don't think fallback is the right word, but very much
soft
like, hey,
floor.
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly. Like, hey, this is worst case scenario. We're going to be able to take Avila, who we really, really like. But if Dalton Kincaid's there, which, by the way, Daniel Jeremiah said today that he passed all of his physicals and all the medicals, should be able to start working out for teams over the next week or so.
Great.
I mean, it's awfully hard to pass on him here at 26.
Yeah, and kind of going, I know that we kind of just spoke about how they may be kind of moving away from tight end and looking more for wide receiver. I tend to think that, well, yeah, that's what I was just going to say is I think that even under that conversation, Kincaid kind of still fits what the Cowboys are going to do, because he will basically be a big slot. I mean, that's essentially how he will operate, especially early in his career. So I don't think that this is necessarily going away from what the Cowboys are interested in doing.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to point out a really important stat here. Yards per route run. It's 2.42. That's number 1 in the class. I saw a stat from, I believe it was Scott Barrett yesterday. The only 2 players in college football history to be over 2.4 yards per route run in college: Rob Gronkowski, Dalton Kincaid. Pretty impressive.
Wow. Pretty good list, I would say. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right,
2.42 is really good yards per route for a very, very good wide receiver as well.
Yes.
So that's pretty impressive.
Again, if that's the Cowboys' first pick on that Thursday night, 3 weeks from today, I'm going to be so happy, because I just think he is a very dynamic player. And I think you're going to see, as we do these next 2 rounds, draft works out pretty well for them. So here we are in the second round. Tyreek Stevenson, who was a 30 visit, a cornerback from Miami. I like him quite a bit. Matthew Bergeron, Cody Mock from North Dakota State, who tested as an insane athlete, still available. Zach Charbonnet, the running back that we just took. Antonio Johnson, the safety. Who stands out for you?
I think Stevenson is a guy that obviously, especially now that we didn't take a cornerback, he seems like a good pick here. He kind of fits the profile they're looking for at corner. Tank Dell, I think, is still an option here, honestly, because you can load up on more pass catchers. You and I had an interesting conversation the other day about Hodges Tomlinson, and if the Cowboys would ever even consider drafting a player like this, because he has some very interesting parts of his game, but this is going to be a very familiar. High. Yeah, if it is also going to be a very familiar tune that he is undersized, and I don't know if the Cowboys are going to be interested in him. For me, I think it's a question of between Stevenson and Matthew Bergeron is still available as well. I tend to think that he's a tackle only. I mean, I think people say that he can play guard,
he's a little tall for a guard, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think he plays high too. And it's different than like Darnell Wright, where his power and his size will kind of help mitigate a little bit of that. Bergeron's more of an athlete, but he plays a little high, so I'd rather stick him out of tackle. So I say for me, it would be Tank Dell or Stevenson, I would probably lean Stevenson considering we went offense last.
I'm good with that. Just really quickly, have you seen Henley yet, the linebacker from Washington State?
No, I haven't
Okay.
actually.
I don't know if the Cowboys have interest in him, but my gosh, if you want a linebacker that can fly sideline to sideline, that's him. And he's every time I get to the second round, it seems like he's always available. And again, I would pick him there. I don't know if the Cowboys would. So just wanted to mention. But Tyreek Stevenson is somebody that I like a lot. He actually played in the slot a little bit for them a couple of years ago. He was awesome in the Senior Bowl. I think this is a perfect spot to draft somebody like him, and he's got some awesome traits.
Yeah, it's tough to be awesome as a cornerback in the Senior Bowl. It's a tough job. You get a lot of exposure because there's lots of one-on-ones, and that's obviously not always so fair to a cornerback. But him and Julius Brents and I'm trying to think of one other guy that really kind of
Darius
stood
Rush.
up. Yeah, Rush, of course, really stood out above and beyond kind of in that drill, which is, again, incredibly difficult to do. So when you see someone do it, you certainly take notice.
All right, let's say Tyreek Stevenson. Again,
Yeah.
a 30 visit for the Cowboys. So Dalton Kincaid, tight end from Utah. Tyreek Stevenson. Like this quite a bit so far. As we're here in the third round, Chandler from North Carolina State is still there. If you want to look at wide receivers, top guys available, Keyshawn Boutte, Jaden Reed, Trey Palmer, Jonathan Mingo, who we talked about the other day. If you want to look at interior offensive linemen, Wanya Morris is still there. It drops off so fast sometimes with these interior guys.
Yeah, I think, third round is not a great spot necessarily to take one of these guys because it's just kind of a hole in the interior spot. Like Chandler Zavala is someone that they put in here, and even now they have him ranked like 70th or something. So he's falling according to the PFF board. Yeah. So I would say let's look, you've still got Juice Scruggs, you still got all those centers that if you wanted to kind of wait a little bit and choose a center in the fourth round. Voorhees is a guy who I think would be a great pick here, but unfortunately he's injured. Like he just injured himself. I think he tore an ACL. So
I think
he may be
combine. Yep.
Yeah, at the combine. So he's going to be out. So this is a redshirt year for him. But if you like Voorhees in his game, might be a good pick. Yeah, you're circling Antonio Mafi as a guy that we both love from UCLA. I tend to think that this is that his name is exactly why you're not taking a guard here, right? Because you got him, you've got Jared Patterson, both of which I feel like you could get in the fourth round if you needed.
I agree.
So let's look at everything else besides offensive linemen because the value isn't great here. And this is, again, just to bring this up, this is why sequencing is done, right? Is because you kind of generally want that position, but you want the value to match where you're picking, and that's why you sequence so you can get good value at every spot. So
let's look at wide receivers, running backs, interior defensive linemen. The top guys available: Dwayne McBride, Tank Bigsby, Kobe Turner, again defensive tackle from Wake Forest, Kendre Miller, Sean Tucker, Keyshawn Boutte. Any of these guys stand out to you?
A lot of these guys. Let's scroll back up. I am a huge fan of Dwayne McBride. He's completely unproven, untested as a receiver. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, look at that. He had 4 targets this last season with 2 catches for 10 yards. He is basically completely unproven as a wide receiver, but as far as naturally talented carriers of the football, he may be the best in the class. Like he is so good in zone plays and just reading, and he's elusive and he's hard to tackle. I tend to think that he's a great fit for the Cowboys because it's a thunder and lightning situation. It's a very clean matchup with Tony Pollard. So I think Dwayne McBride is a guy that they should consider here. There's also Kendre Miller, who's another running back that we've talked about that is available. But I think for me, third and fourth round is where I'm starting to really look at running backs. I usually probably would wait until the fourth round because there's someone like a blinking red light. But in this particular draft, unless you want to talk about Kobe Turner, which I think is another name that we should consider, I think Dwayne McBride is probably the guy I would choose. But again, you're not going to have much defensive tackle chance later.
My issue with defensive tackle too is like once you get to this spot in the draft, I don't know if there's that big of a difference between the third round guys and the fifth round guys. I mean, some of these guys are more athletic than the others, but if you look at kind of the way the drafts have gone over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of running back talent comes off the board between like picks 90 and 130. Like that's just where teams are drafting running backs now.
Yeah.
I would prefer just to get the guy that you want, that you think can be an absolute hammer, rather than hoping and praying that he falls to you at the bottom of the 4th round. So that's why I like the McBride pick a lot here.
Guys, I mean, what's going on here? Marcus is drafting running backs, right?
Hey,
He's insisting we draft running backs. No,
this is the spot. So
I know.
again,
This is exactly what you've been preaching all these years. It's just funny to hear you advocate for a running back.
Now PFF likes this mock a lot.
Oh man,
Dalton Kincaid round 1, Tyreek Stevenson cornerback from Miami round 2, Dwayne McBride, a running back from UAB in round 3. Gotta say, of the 2 drafts that we've done so far, gotta like this one the best.
Yeah. I mean, this gives your offense a real shot in the arm, like because McBride is a guy who I think can come in and be dangerous with the football in his hands behind a good offensive line right away. Won't take a lot of learning curve. And Kincaid, if he's healthy, I mean, he adds an element to your offense that you don't necessarily have, which is kind of rare. I mean, even some of these wide receivers we're talking about drafting at certain points, they don't necessarily add an element that you don't already have. They just add depth at some of that elements. Kincaid is a completely different type of player than what the Cowboys have at tight end. I mean, I love Hendershot. I love Ferguson. But I think that this is a completely different kind of cat.
All right. So there's our first 2 mocks. Let's come back and do one more before we head out. All right, Landon, we are back doing our 3rd mock draft of the day. Today we are going to be, or this last one, we're going to be taking an offensive lineman. So a lot of the same names available, including Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Dalton Kincaid. However,
Jordan Addison showed up. Wow. I wish he would have shown up with some of those other ones. But yeah.
All right. So both Osiris Torrance and Steve Avila are there, including Anton Harris and Dawan Jones. I got to believe of those 4 options, the Cowboys like Avila the best.
I think I agree with you. You're looking at the PFF board, and we're going to ignore their grades here as it stands. I have no issue with taking Avila at 26 if he's there. I mean, he will be there. I feel like
he will.
But again, like it's one of those things where it's not only a nice floor, it's a fantastic fit. Like it makes a lot of sense. The only downside here is that you may view this as a slight reach because you probably view this guy as like a top of the 2nd round guard.
Who cares? I don't care.
But I don't care. He fits so well, and it's such a natural fit that I'd take him, plug him in at left guard, and not even think twice about it.
If you're watching this on YouTube, look at the bottom left of your screen. This is why I think the Cowboys are going to be so interested.
Exactly.
Over 1,000 snaps at left guard. In 2021, played 685 snaps at center, 371 at center in 2020. Also played right tackle, also played right guard. Like, there's just not many of these guys out there that have that kind of position flex and have NFL power. And I think we learned something last year from Tyler Smith is if you have NFL power, you can play right away.
Yeah. And that was my takeaway from last season, is that I'm valuing power more because I think it's not something that's easy to develop. Avila is a guy, like you said, 1,000 snaps at left guard last season, 1,000 snaps at center between the previous 2 seasons, played in the playoff game against elite talent, looked great against Georgia, which is not an easy defensive line to look great against. I don't have any problem taking him at 26.
All right. So by now, you guys know all the names that are going to be available in the 2nd round. It's the same names that we've been saying over and over again, right? Tank Dell, Tyreek Stevenson, Zach Charbonnet. And I think you can make a great case for any of those guys. But let's hypothetically say, Landon, that the Cowboys viewed this offseason as, hey, let's bring back as many guys as we can on defense. Let's add a premier corner in Stephon Gilmore. And let's use the draft to kind of rebuild the offense. I really like some of the options available at wide receiver here in round 2 between Tank Dell, Tyler Scott, who I know people have forgot about a little bit, speedy receiver from Cincinnati, Cedric Tillman, who we talked about on yesterday's show. And then I'm going to bring up a name that I know you watched yesterday, Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. Do you think 58 is too rich for Marvin Mims?
I don't think it's it may be a little bit of a reach, but it's not too rich. It certainly isn't no one's gonna throw a fit if you take Marvin Mims at the bottom of the second round.
It's
I don't
just none of
imagine.
these guys are going to be available to you in the third, and that's what makes drafting at this spot so tough.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. I mean, you're showing the screen right here, and it's Tank Dell, Michael Wilson, Rashee Rice, A.T. Perry, Cedric Tillman, Kayshon Boutte, Marvin Mims, Tyler Scott, Jaden Reed. All these guys could be gone by 90.
Yes.
Like this is a very possibility that this is the run for wide receivers. So for me, I think we take Tank Dell, or if you wanted to talk about Rashee Rice, we could talk about him.
We could take Tank Dell. It's fine.
I like Tank Dell a lot. I think he's kind of, and I think it makes some sense to take him here and just kind of have him, be under Brandon Cook's wing for a year,
Sure.
And I think that he still is slightly different enough from Cooks that you could still get value from him immediately, separate from what Cooks does. And so I like Tank Dell a lot. His Senior Bowl again was just so incredibly impressive. I don't know that I've seen someone who won I think every single one-on-one rep. So I think he has value that the Cowboys could exploit.
If you want to add speed and quickness to your offense, I think it's Tank Dell, right? Because he can do that in so many different ways. And look at the production. He's not somebody like, one of my favorite guys, Tavon Austin, coming out of West Virginia, where everything was kind of manufactured. Like, he was a legitimate receiver who put up like over 2,700 yards over the last 2 seasons at Houston. So I know people are going to say that's high for Tank Dell. I don't care. I think he's a really, really fun player to add to your offense if you already have an established number 1 and number 2 receiver. So we went with Steve Avila in round 1, Tank Dell in round 2. Here we are back in round 3 with the same names. Are you interested in grabbing a running back here, or do you have to grab a defensive player? I will show you there is a certain guy available that we maybe should talk about a little bit. What about Corey Trice, corner from Purdue?
Yes, apparently John Owning's long lost son, Corey Trice, is out here.
Well, it was Eli Ricks, and then he just dumped him off. So.
Yeah. Well, Eli Ricks ran that 40, and then we all I like Corey Trice a lot. I've only watched a little bit of him based on John basically insisting that I do so. I mean, he checks all the boxes. What's funny is that I didn't realize that I had kind of noticed him previously when I was watching. Who was it? I was watching some wide receiver play against Purdue. I can't remember who it is, but he's just a guy that, like, I think he's not super splashy. He's got good size, good length, and solid production, and is just very technically sound. And just kind of makes it look easy. I mean, he's not Forbes, where he's like got a ton of like pick sixes or a ton of ball production or anything, but he's just a smooth, confident corner who, I would say compares kind of similarly to Bland in the sense that he's not like gonna be flashy, but he's just very, very good at covering people and staying on folks and being sticky. So I definitely like Corey Trice here if we're looking to target a cornerback in the 3rd round.
Do you like Trice or Darius Rush better, just based off your initial viewing?
I like Darius Rush better, but I
do too.
But that's because I've seen more of Rush. I think I need to see more of Trice, but I think that Rush has just a physical profile that's better. He's a little bit more of an athlete. I think that, I just really like his kind of versatility a little bit too, because people think he could play safety if he needs to at some point. So I probably would pick Rush.
All right, let's pick Rush here. I mean, either cornerback is fine, but gotta say, I really, really like this draft. Now PFF doesn't like us taking a guard in round 1. It's whatever. Tank Dell in round 2, Darius Rush in round 3. I like that draft quite a bit. Now, is that your favorite of the 3 that we've done so far?
I don't know. I think, man, the 2nd and 3rd one really are good. I'll tell you. How about this? I'll say this: if the Cowboys were able to trade down a little bit in this 3rd draft, and like pick Avila at 29 or something like that, and they get a 4th round or a 3rd round pick or something added on to it, then this would be by far my favorite draft.
I agree. I
But
think the
yeah,
second one was my favorite when we
I
took
think so
Dalton
too.
Kincaid in round 1, just because I think he's a better player than Avila. But I almost feel like this third one we did with Avila, Tank Dell, Darius Rush almost feels like the floor of what you're going to get. Like
Yeah.
this is like almost, I don't want to say worst case scenario, but this is probably the least exciting draft that you're going to have.
Yeah, and again, like this has happened a couple previous years too. This being my floor is exciting to me. Like I because I really feel like it gives you the freedom to kind of feel confident that something is going to fall to you that's better than this, and this is already. If you walk
Yes.
away with this, like
We're
you're
happy.
feeling good.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Scouting Show with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft, salary cap management, and more, join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for listening to the show. Please go check us out on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. You can follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.